First of all, thank you all for attending the meeting on a Friday afternoon. It's our 12th meeting of the Standing Committee. We're starting a new study today, critical minerals and associated value chains in Canada. So it's a fresh start. Before I get into introducing or thanking our witnesses, I want to let you know that there's a vote in the House of Commons this afternoon, which is expected to start anytime between 5 minutes from now and 20 minutes from now. And as soon as the bells ring, we will have to suspend the meeting. But if all of you are able to be available after, the vote should probably take 45 minutes to an hour tops, and we can come back and continue the meeting. We'll get through the vote as quickly as we can. Could be less, but remains to be seen. So thank you all. So I think all of our witnesses are familiar with our process. I think all of you have been to committee before, so I don't need to spend any time or certainly any length of time explaining process. You're free to speak in either, and in fact, you're encouraged to speak in both official languages. You will be asked questions, most certainly in French and English. You have translation services available. We're doing these meetings by Zoom, so sometimes that comes with challenges like delays and whatnot. So everybody has learned to be patient and wait for things to click in and work. The other thing I want to do is I want to welcome our newest member, Mr. Lloyd. Thank you for joining the committee. I hope you will come to realize that this is a committee, a unique committee, and that we get along pretty well. We do have bumps in the road from time to time, but aside from those odd occasions, things run pretty smoothly, and we don't generally encounter some of the challenges that you see in other committees, and I hope that continues to be the case, and I look forward to working with you. And Mr. McLean, you and your colleagues, if you could extend our thanks to Ms. Harder for her contribution to the committee while she was here, I would be grateful. So let's jump in. We have 5 witnesses here today: the Canadian Critical Minerals and Materials Alliance, the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum, the Department of Natural Resources, of course, the Mining Association of Canada, and last but certainly not least, PDAC. Everybody here knows. So thank you all for joining. So the process is each group will be given up to 5 minutes to make introductory remarks. At the conclusion of all of the presentations, I'll open the floor to questions. So on that note, why don't I start with Mr. London, since you're by yourself.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
Am I heard?
Sorry.
Order, Mr. Chair.
Who is that counter? Mr. Zimmer. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, may I just make a suggestion? Because we know that if the bells do go, we have about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I would just propose that we would hear the witnesses. Certainly, if it takes longer than 30 minutes, I would understand. But hear as many witnesses as possible before we jump onto the other call. Before just suspending immediately to go to that Zoom.
Well,
we'll have to wait another 20 minutes.
Mr. Zimmer, I would. I agree with that sentiment generally. And ordinarily, if we're all sitting in Ottawa, that doesn't create a problem because we can all walk to the house and we know how long that takes. But in the virtual world, sometimes there's connection challenges, as Mr. May just indicated. And given that, and I believe we need unanimous consent once the bells start anyway, I mean, why don't we do this? If there's a witness who's partway through his presentation, we'll let him finish. How's that?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Mr. London, go ahead.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you again for the invitation to appear today. The world is undergoing an economic transformation with innovative technologies, clean technologies driving the pace of change. The IEA and the World Bank both stress a significant role of minerals and metals, especially non-traditional materials like lithium, graphite, rare earths, scandium, and others for our low carbon future. China controls much of the full value chains around the critical materials, and governments and industrials around the world have called for reliable, alternative, secure sources of supply. Despite Canada's vast resource wealth, our critical materials remain largely undeveloped and not significant and not strategically leveraged, primarily because of the lack of understanding of their significant climate, national security, and economic benefits. The Industry Strategy Council, a forum of experienced business leaders assembled by ISED, have recently issued a report and created a blueprint for implementation, a roadmap for how Canada can enable critical material value chains to be developed. C2M2A, Critical Materials Alliance, has proposed a suite of recommendations around policy, investment, R&D, secondary sources, education, and trade over the past year. With the limited time today, I'll just touch on 3 important themes and 1 specific recommendation. First, consumer demand. Consumer demand attracts production, which thusly attracts value-added processing, which attracts raw material supply. Demand pull strategies provide stronger results than those built upon supply push strategies, an approach which we have traditionally taken. Increasing demand for electrified transportation, battery supply, advanced materials and associated manufacturing are key measures the government needs to expedite to fulfill our clean energy aspirations and ensure that Canada is as competitive and in this increasingly competitive global theater. With clarity of Canadian branded supply, auto and parts manufacturers could be encouraged to establish some of their current out-of-country supply sources to set up shop in Canada. This demand would facilitate reliable Canadian certified or branded material development and value creation where Canada sets the benchmark standards. Second, clarity of supply, which I just mentioned. Canada has made progress in reducing its capital and operating costs of GHG, reducing mineral production. Canadian resources and material producers must continue to strive to meet and exceed ESG standards, essentially certifying our offerings, the demand of which are of significant interest to consumers. Critically important, though, is the necessity to build value chains local to the demand pull and to feed components to the factories located close to assembly plants. And the third bullet is technology advantage to gain leadership. I'm aware of material research in Canada that has direct implications on local supply chains in electrified auto sector, materials for vehicle lightweighting of body structures, traction motors, and permanent magnets with reliable production closer to home. They're all being called for. Canada must also be prepared to deliver materials for energy storage technologies, but also be prepared for the rapid changes in those technologies. Advanced materials and process development capabilities are within reach at Canada's commercial and national labs. But the question before the House, and I use that term loosely because in your case, you actually have a House, is how do we spearhead and champion this critical material campaign? I'd like to suggest that Canada establish a critical materials office led by an internationally respected business leader and effectively staffed with economic development, technical, investment, and policy experts from industry, government, and multidisciplinary academia. The office should be mandated to pull together and create, where necessary, enhanced critical material value chains and work with provincial authorities to ensure regulatory alignment. They should be prepared to see that the most promising material production and manufacturing pilot and demonstration projects move forward and move towards operation. Leadership from ISED and NRCan in partnership with industry are key to our collective success. This is not a government exercise alone, but we can use our unprecedented Canadian ingenuity. For the sake of time, we have the raw materials. We should be not selling them and then buying back processed products. Time is sadly of the essence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. London. And as we just discussed a few moments ago, the bells have started ringing in the House. You're complete your presentation. I'm going to suspend the meeting now, and we can pick up where we left off here after the vote. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you shortly. Thank you to our witnesses, and apologies. We had a small housekeeping matter in the house that had to be dealt with, which is now behind us. Thank God. So we had left off with Mr. London having completed his presentation. So why don't we move on to Ms. Espley for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you for that. Just double check that my sound is still okay. Everybody can hear me? Okay. So thank you for inviting me. And as the president of the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum, it's my pleasure to act as a witness today for these proceedings. Just by way of background, the CIM is a global mining powerhouse. We have over 10,000 members. We are laser focused as an institute, and I'm, really proud, and maybe you don't realize that we have 120 years of history under our belt as an institute. That shows a lot of resilience as an organization, having endured world wars, depressions, and now getting through a pandemic. Our secret to our success is really our collaborative nature, and we address the mining industry's needs. We drive innovation, we develop best practices, and we are united globally through peer groups. We have peer groups, similar institutes in Australia, the United States, the UK, Europe, South America, and others. And CIM right now is very active in leading the global action on tailings for the mining industry. I'm very proud of the work that we are leading there. CIM has and will continue to help members and the Canadian mineral industry make positive impacts and obtain a competitive edge through our One CIM community and a gateway to a world of knowledge. We operate according to 3 strategic goals. Our first goal is to create, co-create, and share leading edge knowledge. We also unite and engage an entire mining community. And our third goal is to expand the awareness of the mining industry's essential contribution to society. We know who our members are. At the CIM, we have members from government, non-government, academia, industry, the supplies and service sector, OEMs, that's the original equipment manufacturers, original technology manufacturers, from financial institutes, investors, and Indigenous peoples. Together, the CIM and all our stakeholders are represented. So we have extraordinary skills. We have deep knowledge and expertise. We have entrepreneurs, we have visionary leaders, engineers, geologists, and the full spectrum right across the value chain for critical minerals and other products that are offered by the mining industry. CIM knows that we can leverage our brain power, our collective effort, and our energy to benefit the mining industry, to benefit the Canadian economy with good jobs, and for the sustainability of our planet. The CIM has 10 technical societies with our volunteer members. For example, we have a geological society, a management and mineral economics society, underground mining society, surface mining society, environmental and social responsibility society, and others. Each of our societies is working on their specific technical expertise and focus area to build best practices, guidelines, and standards that matter to the mining industry, that are driven by the mining industry. Most recently, we have created 10 global mining guidelines. These include the battery electric vehicle guidelines for underground mining. This was made for the mining industry's objective of green mining, for green metals, for a green economy. This is toward the mining industry's goal of zero net carbon by 2050 or sooner. At CIM, we are proud of our mineral resource, mineral reserve guidelines and best practices. This is for technical reporting in compliance with National Instrument 43101 disclosure and the requirements of qualified persons. Our MRMR guidelines are world-class. They're referenced in all other mining jurisdictions. The CIM and our members are recognized globally for our vision, our spirit, and our deep knowledge and expertise in mining, from exploration through to closure and rehabilitation. Personally, I joined the CIM when I was an engineering student at the University of Toronto. My dad was a mining engineer and he encouraged me to join, to see who's who, to learn about the industry and its enormous value to Canada, and to be part of the CIM family and to make a difference. And 30 years later, I'm the head of the family. I'm the head of the CIM, and I want CIM to make a difference. And this is really perfect timing through this work with the critical minerals, because CIM is completing a strategic plan right now. And critical minerals are an opportunity to be a cornerstone of our future efforts through the CIM. When I reflect back on 2017, we had a pan-Canadian mining proposal being put together by representatives all around the table from different stakeholders. It was for cluster funding. It was the first time in my history that I had seen such a willingness and collaboration effort.
I apologize, Ms. Espley, but I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up very quickly.
Okay. I would say that we weren't successful then, but the mining industry is poised and ready, and we need the government's support. CIM indeed sees critical minerals as an opportunity for Canada to step up, accelerate, and lead a pivotal, imperative effort for the Canadian mining industry and for the betterment of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for having to cut off, but we have to stick to our time limits as much as possible. So why don't we move to the Mining Association of Canada?
Monsieur le Président, membres du comité, et
of the committee and witnesses, my name is Pierre Graton. I'm president of the Canadian Mining Association. I'm accompanied here by my colleague, Brendan Marshall, the Vice President for Economic Affairs. Thanks for this opportunity to speak to you today on such an important issue, the critical minerals.
Uncertainty has focused attention on the precariousness of existing supply sources for many primary materials, including critical minerals, classified by Canada's allies as the primary materials on which their economies and national security depend. An increasingly uncomfortable reliance upon China for many of these commodities has led Europe, the US, Canada, Australia, and other allies to come together to develop strategies and policy instruments to lessen this dependence. Within Canada, there is a growing desire to source and procure locally where possible, especially when doing so achieves better environmental and health outcomes. Recent polling data finds that almost 90% of those surveyed like the idea of Canada being a preferred global source for critical minerals, and would like to see government take a number of steps to support this approach. The environmental, social, and corporate governance leadership of mining companies operating in Canada, boosted by MAC's unique and increasingly globally recognized Towards Sustainable Mining initiative, reinforces confidence that when it comes to world-leading sustainable mining practices, Canadian mining is a leader. The government has recognized that a resilient Canadian mining and metal manufacturing sector is essential to the 2030 climate plan's goal of establishing a domestic battery electric vehicle manufacturing supply chain. If a prosperous transition economy in Canada is contingent on the establishment of a domestic BEV supply chain, then strategic critical minerals investments are essential. So how do we make it happen? We propose two types of investments. First, programs that de-risk investments currently subject to China's market dominance, thus enabling current gaps in critical and BEV supply chains the chance of being filled domestically in Canada. And second, investments that strengthen and enhance Canada's current levels of critical and BEV mineral and metal production. For decades, China has held monopoly-like control over critical minerals production and distribution, rendering the rest of the world reliant for procurement and creating a level of risk that deters investors from entering these markets. For example, who would invest in a rare earth mine with no access to a downstream facility to create value-added rare earth products? Who would invest in a value-added manufacturing facility when there is no upstream mine to source from? What advanced manufacturer would set up shop where they didn't have access to the materials they need to produce their end products, BEVs, high-tech medical, or otherwise? The answer is no one, at least not without strategic government support that prioritizes economic security and autonomy enough to enable companies that play by the rules to thrive. To address these challenges, we propose the establishment of a 5-year, $250 million program to de-risk projects across the critical mineral supply chain, using a 2-tier approach, first of advancing pilot and demonstration projects, and second, scaling the successful ones to a level where operational independence is achieved. Beyond plugging current supply chain gaps, government must also not compromise existing supply, with the impact of carbon pricing on remote mines being the top concern. Off-grid remote mines are virtually exclusively reliant on diesel fuel for power and haul fleet operations for the time being. With very limited and currently uneconomic options to displace diesel, the competitiveness and longevity of these operations under the proposed clean fuel regulation and the projected $170 per ton carbon price will erode. Why does it matter in the context of critical minerals? Because in 2018, for which we have data, 52% of nickel and 62% of cobalt shipped in Canada came from off-grid mines. Today, most EV batteries use cathodes with 60% nickel and 20% cobalt. Unless we get climate policy right, a Canadian critical minerals value chain will not materialize. So even if we plug rare earth supply chain gaps, we cannot compromise our ability to produce the materials that make up 80% of the input into batteries. To this end, we seek your support for an industrial off-grid clean electrification fund. COVID-19 has put into sharp focus what happens when we let industry slip away, leaving us at the mercy of the global supply chains that, in times of crisis, can fail. Let's seize the tremendous opportunities before us to expand and strengthen our economic future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, let's move on to PDAC. I don't know whether it's Ms. McDonald or Mr. Queen.
It's myself.
Excellent, okay.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm Lisa McDonald, the Executive Director of the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee today. As the leading voice of the mineral exploration and development sector in Canada, PDAC represents more than 7,200 members, and our work focuses on fostering a responsible and competitive mineral industry. Mineral exploration and mining is a cornerstone of our economy, employing over 700,000 Canadians and contributing in excess of $100 billion to our GDP in 2020. It is the largest private sector industrial employer of Indigenous people on a proportional basis in Canada and a key partner of Indigenous businesses from coast to coast to coast. Discovery of new deposits is an essential part of the mineral industry value chain, and over the last decade, more than $15 billion has been spent by companies exploring for minerals and metals in Canada. Mineral exploration is a significant economic driver in many northern and remote parts of the country through employment, procurement of services, and providing development opportunities for the future. This sector is uniquely positioned to play a key role in reigniting critical parts of Canada's economy as we look beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has reminded us of the resiliency of our mineral industry, as many companies were able to quickly adapt to find ways to safely operate. It has also reminded us of the value of infrastructure and how northern and remote regions in Canada suffer from a deficit in transportation and telecommunication links. In fact, Natural Resources Canada estimates that mineral exploration in our 3 territories dropped by 50% in 2020 versus the year prior, whereas spending in Ontario and Quebec actually increased over the same period. To ensure all of Canada can recover from this pandemic, governments must focus on fiscal and regulatory frameworks that support the competitiveness of our mineral industry and development of the infrastructure needed to build back stronger. If something is not grown, it is either recycled or mined, and the things that Canadians rely on each day, the inputs of modern society, come directly from the mineral industry. Our industry expertise, vast resources, and potential for further discoveries means Canada is well positioned to become the global supplier of choice for the clean technology and renewable energy sectors and lead our transition towards a low carbon future. However, mineral exploration is a complex process with low odds of success. Only about 1 in 10,000 mineral claims reach an advanced exploration stage, and just 1 in 1,000 advanced stage projects become mines. Junior exploration companies do the bulk of this high-risk, capital-intensive work and account for upwards of 70% of all mineral discoveries made in Canada. However, new discoveries in Canada are in decline, with grassroots exploration down by roughly 75% over the last decade. To become the global supplier of choice, Canada must encourage more investment in grassroots exploration and the search for new critical mineral deposits. To do so, we recommend the government work with industry to improve the effectiveness of the flow-through share incentive and increase the mineral exploration tax credit from 15% to 30% in each province, and from 15% to 40% in each territory, as each of these two mechanisms combine to generate roughly 2/3 of all funds raised for exploration in Canada. The government also plays a critical role by facilitating public geoscience. Research by Ernst & Young in 2019 showed that every dollar in public geoscience spending by the government in recent programs has generated more than 7 times that in overall economic benefit to Canada. PDAC recommends the federal government take advantage of this value proposition by creating a new funding mechanism to support comprehensive provincial and territorial mineral resource assessments based on geoscientific evidence to identify and incorporate critical mineral potential into infrastructure, land management, and conservation decision making. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your presentation. Much appreciated. Okay, last but not least is our representative or representatives from the Department of Natural Resources. So, Mr. Labonte, I see you've got your mute off, so I'm going to assume that you're taking the lead anyway.
Indeed, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope the audio is good, Clerk. Merci, mesdames et messieurs.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for inviting us to speak to you today about those working in the critical industry, minerals industry.
Some of my colleagues from NRCan and as previous experts have demonstrated, those from across the country. And let's start by saying this is an extremely timely discussion, certainly one that is on the topic of many people's minds and has been amplified by the pandemic. And as Canada looks to rebuild the economy for the better following the pandemic and its challenges it continues to present, this includes building a future and an economy that's greener, more inclusive, and much more lower carbon. And it includes also taking action where Canada can shine and lead the way. I'll briefly cover 3 things that I think complements where we've been today with some of the other speakers. 1, about the importance of critical minerals. 2, the opportunity for Canada and to be a supplier of choice. And 3, some of the work that we're doing at NRCan and with our colleagues to make these things a reality. First off, I think as we would all say, but maybe it's just important to underline, critical minerals go into everything from solar panels to wind turbines, from fuel cells to next generation batteries and storage facilities for energy, from electric vehicles to robotics to electronics to health applications to defense procurement and to new and modern alloys and metals. In the decade to come and the decades to come, these minerals are forecast to skyrocket, and we expect that demand will increase. For example, the World Bank has predicted a 500% increase by 2050 in the production of minerals like graphite, lithium, and cobalt, just to feed the clean energy transition alone. The World Bank also estimates that over 3 billion tons of minerals and metals will be needed to deploy the clean energy needed for the world's transition to a lower carbon future. So here presents the opportunity, and an opportunity in which Canada is uniquely positioned to take advantage of in this global context. We already produce 60 minerals and metals of different varieties and are capable of producing many more. Canada is, by all estimations, a global giant in the mining and metal community. We have the 4th largest holder of rare earth elements behind China, Brazil, and Vietnam. We are the only nation in the Western Hemisphere with all the minerals and metals needed to produce advanced batteries for electric vehicles. and perhaps most importantly, is that Canada is a world leader in the environmental, social, and governance credentials and clean mining practices that are expected and not only important, but a responsibility for Canada to promote and practice around the world. These are our competitive advantages. And as we look at the opportunity is one in which we want to see and one in which Canada can shine at not only getting critical minerals out of the ground, but in building the value chains as it's identified in your study as to how these are important. Let's pause for just a moment to talk about value chains. Value chains are
actually, sorry, if I could interrupt you and just pause for a second. I'm told that there may be some audio challenges. Maybe your boom might not be in the right place.
Any better?
It's Madam Clerk, is that?
Yes, Mr. Labonte, if you could make sure that your microphone is selected when you look on the Zoom screen. There should be an indication at the bottom that shows that your headset is selected on Zoom.
It appears to be the case. Shall I, or maybe speak louder?
Sure. Let's see if you're able to speak a little bit louder. We'll give that a try. Thank you very much.
My apologies, Chair. My children don't think I'm soft-spoken, but maybe it's just today.
Mr. Labonte, you can always try lowering your microphone a little bit too, just towards your mouth, your chin. Yeah, let's give that a try. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. So I'll try and pick up again. Here we were talking about and building value-added and midstream and downstream activities that utilize the minerals. So when we talk about value chains, there's a lot of different connotations. Essentially, we're talking about building the value-added all the way from exploring to discovering to developing to smelting and mining and processing to creating the minerals and metals that are needed as inputs to products to actually utilizing those things. So earlier we would have spoken about the difference between and the importance of supply and demand and the linkage between the two things to connect the dots. And this is an easy example as we think about electric vehicle batteries, where Canada has all of the materials and minerals. We have the world leading mining sector and research community, as we've heard. We have a strong and integrated automotive economy, and we have much expertise in these areas, in addition to plenty of renewable and affordable energy. These together form a value chain that would enable Canada and its partners to work more collaboratively. The other part that we would underline about critical minerals is that they are a pan-Canadian opportunity. So critical mineral activities, critical mineral potential is seen across the country. It is not concentrated in one region, but rather regions that are interconnected between the north, the south, central Canada, western Canada, and of course running north-south with our partners in the United States and east-west to partners in Asia and Europe. This is why NRCan has been working together with other partners across the federal system to build value chains and to focus our attention on how we can develop and further advance working more collaboratively and to achieve outcomes. One such example is the Battery Initiative, where we've conducted consultations with partners at Innovation, Science, and Economic Development on what is necessary and what is needed for Canada to succeed in this space. It certainly has demonstrated in what we heard, which was that concerted action at each part of the value chain is necessary, and we call this the mines to mobility approach. Moving forward, with this in mind, our work on critical minerals takes advantage of a whole of government span across many departments and many layers and levels of expertise, both in and outside of the federal government. Our work with our provinces and territories as partners and full partners is through the Canadian Minerals and Metals Plan, a pan-Canadian strategy developed with the provinces and territories that lays a vision for a stronger, more competitive Canada in the mining sector. And we are also working together with our provinces and territories as partners in a new task team that we've built around all Canadian critical minerals and battery value chains. These are an important area in which Canada and our efforts are working to develop a finalized critical minerals list for Canada, a list that identifies which minerals and which metals are of strategic importance. Our partners in the United States, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, and Australia all have such lists and are using them to orient investment, to identify strategic assets, and to prioritize decision-making to support critical mineral projects and industrial chains. Beyond Canada, our current collaboration with the United States is already a positive success story. We have a critical mineral action plan with the United States that provides us a solid foundation to continue our work with the new U.S. administration and to advance mutual objectives on clean energy supply chain security and economic recovery. We are equally working bilaterally with the EU and Japan. There's much more to say, and I'm sure other experts have already added. I would like to kind of conclude by saying I'm joined here by my colleagues here from NRCan, and we are looking forward to responding to your questions and providing and sharing more information on our actions as we help achieve a vision working together to make Canada a success in critical minerals. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lamonte. I appreciate that, particularly your timing. I can tell you've done this before. Okay, so first up, I believe, is Mr. Patzer for 6 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And we have some unfinished committee business that we need to get to here. Our last meeting, we had tabled a motion for a debate on...
Sorry, I don't know that I can hear you now. Your mic kicked out for a sec.
Oh, can you hear me there now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So at our last meeting, we had tabled a motion for a study on Keystone XL, and we went into debate. Now, we never did vote on our motion, so I would like to retable the motion that, pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study of the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline, including A, the loss of jobs and investment across Canada in all sectors that supply the energy sector; B, the impact the cancellation of this project will have on the economic recovery from COVID-19 of Canada's energy sector / natural resource industry; that the committee invite relevant witnesses, including representatives of industries and workers affected, as well as the Minister of Natural Resources; that the Minister appear for not less than 2 hours; that these meetings be televised; that 6 meetings be allocated for this study; and that following this study, a report with recommendations be presented to the House of Commons. I feel it's important that we do this, as we all know that it's extremely important for the recovery of our economy, but also for several interested parties. In particular, I think of in my riding of the Nekoneet First Nation, of which the chief is the president of Natural Law Energy, who had an equity stake invested into Keystone XL pipeline. So there are several other groups, of course, who are interested, be workers, be companies that would want to see this study done and completed and see that the government takes it seriously, that this project is a must-have for Canada.
Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you. I assume what you're doing is bringing a motion to resume debate. Is that?
Well, we definitely want to have a vote on it as well. But I mean, if we want to resume debate, great. But we definitely want to have a vote on it today as well.
Okay. I think there's some procedural machinations that need to be followed here, I believe. Madam Clerk, perhaps you can
yes,
confirm that for me.
So the member would officially need to move that the committee proceed to another order of business, and then we can go to a vote right away.
Okay. Mr. Patzer, perhaps that's what you intended to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to proceed to a vote on this motion because it's of utmost importance.
Okay, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, in the circumstances, then we go straight to a vote. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, well, just so I'm clear, it's been a long day. We just go straight to that vote now on the motion, or do we need to vote on his motion to proceed to do that?
We would be voting on the motion to, just bear with me here. We would be voting on the motion that the committee proceed to another order of business, which would be Mr. McLean's motion. And that is considered a dilatory motion, so it's not debatable. So we're voting that the committee proceed to another order of business right now.
Okay. Well, can you call do a roll call then, please? We'll have a vote.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Oui, j'appuie.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Sadhu?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Weiler?
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Patzer?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Monsieur Simard,
Oui.
Mr. Cannings.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, thank
that's
you, Madam Clerk.
11 unanimous consent, 11.
That was easy.
11 yeas. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So now we proceed to vote on Mr. Patzer's motion. Is that correct?
Yes, the committee has agreed to move to a new order of business. So Mr. Patzer has moved that motion. So we can now vote on that.
Okay.
A point of order.
Sorry, I didn't hear where that came from. Bob or Mr. Zimmer, go ahead.
Isn't it appropriate if the motion has been moved again to go into the motion itself and then debate the motion and then go to the vote? If we're not debating the motion, that would be unusual, just like what we just did was a little bit unusual. So I would just challenge the clerk that she is doing things in order. Thank you.
Okay. I understood Mr. Patzer wanted to proceed right to a vote in any event, but Madam Clerk, do you want to respond to that?
There still is a procedure that has to be followed.
I understand that, Mr. Zimmer. Thank you. Madam Clerk, does if there's an appetite to debate it, then I see hands up.
Je voulais simplement souligner, Monsieur le Président, que...
Just want to point out, Mr. Chair, that the last opportunity we had to debate this, there were people that couldn't really speak, so maybe we should have a debate on the motion.
I think that's what we're going to do. So I see hands raised. Let me Mr. Simard, you would be up first in that case. So what you have the floor.
Yes, I would basically say the same thing I just said. The last opportunity we had to debate the motion, if my memory doesn't fail me, some people couldn't really speak. That was my case. I think Mr. Cannings also. So I just wondered if it would not be right to debate this motion that's before us to some extent.
We're doing that now. So the speaking list I have right now appears to be Mr. Lefebvre. Mr. McLean had his hand up, but I believe he's taken it down. So Mr. Simard, if you're finished, I'll move to Mr. Lefebvre.
Actually, Mr. McLean put his hand back up.
Okay, Mr. McLean.
No, I will defer to Mr. Lefebvre and I'll go after him.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. Mr. Lefebvre.
Okay, so just very quickly, certainly we understand how important this is. And on Monday, we had a vote on establishing a special committee with the Canada-US Committee, of which Line 5 is one of the main topics and other topics are, as we all know, that they will be dealing with at that committee. So I think by setting this at this committee, we're just going to be duplicating that work. So even though certainly I'm in favor, that's why I voted in favor of proceeding with the Canada-US Committee, the special committee, given the relationship between Canada and US and how tied we are certainly on the energy and on certainly on minerals and metals as well. So that's kind of my piece saying, listen, I agree. This is extremely important. There is a committee that has been set up. There has been a vote on this on Monday. And so I think we can certainly, so I will be voting against this motion, but I just want to remind that my colleagues from the Conservative that brought this forward, that I voted for the motion to create the special committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, I've got
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. I've got Mr. Simard, Mr. McLean, and then Mr. Zimmer. But before I give the floor to Mr. Simard, I just want to thank our witnesses again for their patience. Today's been an unfortunate day for disruptions. If you can bear with us for a brief time, see how long this may take. I'll express some optimism that it might not take long and we can vote on it, in which case we can carry on with with the questions to you, but just bear with us for a few minutes. So Mr. Simard, over to you.
Donc, oui.
Yes, quickly on the motion by Craig. I don't see any difficulty in carrying out this kind of study, maybe after what we're doing, when we have completed our 6 sittings. But in order to vote in favor of his motion, I will propose a slight amendment. I can propose that to him, and we'll see how the discussions flow. Maybe on the energy transition, so adding to what Craig proposed, point C that could go something like to also study energy transition to respond to the climate challenges and meet some environmental goals in Canada. So I could send maybe this amendment to Craig. So along those lines, I could be open to supporting that motion with that slight amendment referring to energy transformation.
Mr. Smart?
Oui, je pourrais.
Yes, I could move an amendment.
Have to vote on the amendment if you're moving it now before we've actually voted on the motion. So, do you have wording for an amendment?
Ouais, je peux peut-être.
Yes, I could quickly send it to the clerk.
Is moving. I understand that Mr. Lloyd and Mr. Patzer's in the room. They both want to speak, so their hands don't appear on the screen. So why don't we go to Mr. McLean, and then I'll go to those two, and then I can go to Mr. Zimmer, and then that'll give Mr. Simard time to put something, prepare something for us on his amendment. So Mr. McLean, over to you.
Well, my understanding is there's an amendment proposed on the floor, so I'm not sure I'm out of order, but I really just want to call the question and have the vote.
Okay, well, and you're entitled to do that. I was trying to, if that's the case, then I think we have no choice but to wait for Mr. Simard and get the exact wording on his amendment and address that first. So Mr. Simard, if you, we can do one of two things. We can suspend for a moment while you do that, or we could potentially carry on with the witnesses and then come back to this when you indicate you're ready with something for us to look at.
Ça devrait être envoyé dans quelques secondes au greffier.
Yes, it will only take a few seconds to send it to the clerk.
For a moment then, and we'll wait for you to send that to the clerk, okay? All right, so we'll suspend.
Je peux faire ça rapidement. Donc, après le point B, j'ajouterai un point C.
Okay, so after B, I would add C, and C would say that energy transition to face climate change and reach Canada's climate targets. So that would be C.
Okay, does anybody need it read again?
Je peux peut-être vous lire l'ensemble de la motion pour que ça...
Well, I could read the entire motion so that it makes more sense. So if I reread the motion, if I reread Craig McLean's motion, it says that according to Rule 108.2, that the committee suspends its study on Keystone XL regarding the loss of jobs and investments in Canada that support the energy sector. B, the repercussions of the cancellation of this project on the Canadian energy sector and resources related to COVID-19. And C, the transition to face our climate change targets for Canada. So I wanted everything to sound more coherent, but you already knew the rest of the motion.
Okay, is everybody clear on the proposed language of the amendment? Okay, I see Mr. McLean's hand up first. Is that for the same reason before you want to bring this to a vote? Or did you want to discuss the amendment?
I'll discuss the amendment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure how it wasn't quite flowing to me about the last, the amended part of it, the transition to. So if we can repeat it again, the verbiage isn't flowing for me at this point, and I just need to understand it more completely. So if you can read it again, and if the translator can ensure it is proper. I'm not sure how it ties in with the sentence before it. Can you repeat, please, Mr. Smart?
Okay.
Perhaps what I could do, Craig, would be to read the beginning of your motion and I can also read my proposal. That way it will sound a bit more clear. So would that work for you? So according to Rule 108.2, that the committee starts a study on the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline, notably about the project and its effect on Canada's energy and climate change targets. So I wanted to talk about the Keystone XL cancellation because it could be an opportunity for us to study our energy transition, not only in Alberta, but across all provinces whose economy is based on fossil fuels.
Is that clarified, Mr. McLean?
Yes, the intent is clear, and I just don't think from the words I heard they didn't reflect that intent. So I appreciate understanding the intent, and that's why I think perhaps the words in translation are necessary for how we view the motion. Thank you.
Okay, so are you suggesting you need to see the translation in writing before you're able to vote on the amendment?
Well, the words will matter at the end, what we're looking at doing here. And if the intent, from what I heard in the words initially and what Mr. Samar just indicated in the intent, I heard two things.
Okay, well, we need to make sure everybody's clear on what the amendment is before we move on. So question is, how do we
point of order,
that?
Mr. Chair?
Where's that coming from?
From Lloyd.
Mr. Patzer. Okay, Mr. Lloyd, go ahead. I'm
just wondering, Mr. Speaker, looking at the member Simard, his motion is his amendment is significantly different than the substantive motion that was put forward by Mr. Patzer. And I would ask the clerk or yourself to make a determination, since the rules are that a substantive motion does require 48 hours notice. If this amendment is indeed it is a substantive motion on its own, and I would argue that it's not really a true amendment. And so, since there's no 48 hours notice, I would ask for your ruling to rule this so-called amendment out of order as not really an amendment, but as a substantive motion on its own.
Okay, if that's a fair comment, and I'm not suggesting it isn't, I think it's important that we know what the amendment is, and I'm not clear that everybody understands what the proposed amendment is at this stage. So Mr. McLean has just indicated that he needs some certainty provided on that. So I'm going to...
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Chair, from the wording that was translated.
J'aurais besoin d'une clarification, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, I would also like to have some clarification. I would like to hear some clarification on what was just said. If I don't table, I'm not tabling a motion. I am proposing an amendment.
Moving an amendment to the motion that's before us, Mr. Lloyd is telling his position is that the amendment in itself is so substantive that it's an affected its own motion and therefore can't stand as an amendment. So he wants a ruling on that. I've been trying to resolve the clarity issue with Mr. McLean, but let me confer with the clerk for a moment. I can address that issue. That may solve the problem in its entirety. So bear with us. We will suspend for a moment while I confer with the clerk. Mr. Lloyd has asked me to rule on whether the amendment is appropriate and acceptable. I'm suffering from the same problem that Mr. McLean is, in that I'm not entirely clear what the amendment is because I don't have it in front of me in writing. So what I'm going to propose, and I think this will resolve the problem, I hope this will resolve the problem to everybody's satisfaction, is that given it is Friday afternoon and given that our next meeting is Monday morning, can we defer this discussion to the meeting on Monday morning, at which time we will have the amendment in writing, we will all be able to understand it, and then at that time I will then be able to look at it, know what I'm ruling on, and we can rule on it, and if it's appropriate to vote on it, and then we can move on to vote on the main motion. We're losing no time because we're going to be doing it Monday morning instead of the afternoon, and I'm assuming none of you are interested in having a meeting this weekend. So if that's to everybody's satisfaction, we can get back to the meeting and get back to our witnesses.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I believe if we do want to defer the debate on that, we need somebody to move a motion to adjourn debate on this, and then we would have to have a vote on that.
Okay. Are you moving?
I'm not.
Okay.
I would happily do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cannings. So, Madam Clerk, we have a motion to adjourn debate on this discussion. I'm assuming there's no debate on that, and we can move to a vote on that.
That's correct.
Yes. So let's. If you could please take a vote, I would appreciate it.
Certainly will do. Mr. Lefebvre?
J'appuie d'ajourner le débat.
Mr. May?
Mr. May has been replaced with Mr. Saini.
Oh, apologies. Mr. Saini?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Sidhu?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Weiler?
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Nay.
Mr. McLean?
No.
Mr. Patzer?
Against.
Mr. Zimmer?
Against.
Monsieur Simard?
Pour.
Mr. Cannings?
Yes.
We have 6 yeas and 4 nays.
Thank you. Okay. So let's get back to our questions. Mr. Patzer, you did have the floor. I will give you the floor if you want to continue asking if you have questions for our witnesses.
Okay. Am I at 6 minutes still, or where am I at for time?
Well, technically I probably shouldn't, but I'm in a good mood, so go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I'm going to start just for a question for the Department of Natural Resources. Has the government shown any awareness or interest in whether the production of batteries has an environmental impact, including net emissions for greenhouse gases?
Mr. Chair,
sure.
Is it possible that I could ask for clarification on what types of batteries the member is asking about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just in regards to electric vehicles, EV batteries.
Thank you. So your question is whether the department has done any analysis about the emissions or the relationship between
Point d'ordre,
generating.
Monsieur le Président. Il y a plus d'interprétation. Monsieur le Président, le son de Monsieur Labonté n'est pas suffisant.
There is no interpretation because the sound of Mr. Labonté lacks volume for interpreters to do safely their work.
I think this is the same problem we were experiencing earlier, Mr. Labonte, that I think the volume of your voice is having an impact on the interpretation.
Indeed, somebody was trying to correct that while you were working on the motion, so it seems my audio is sketchy. Mes excuses, Monsieur Simard, puis mes collègues.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Simard, and I'm sorry for interpreters. I don't know exactly how we can increase volume. Otherwise...
Poser mes collègues de ressources naturelles de répondre à des questions, if that's possible, Mr. Chair, if that would satisfy the committee, or if there is an issue with my volume. I'm not sure whether it's better or worse at this point.
You actually cut out. I couldn't hear parts of what you just said. I'm not having any difficulty hearing you, and the translation, when you were speaking French, the translation was fine on my end. So why don't we continue?
Pardon,
Maybe
je sais pas ce qui se passe, mais il n'y a plus de traduction sur personne présentement. Donc,
Translation will resume now.
Any translation for Mr. Samar?
Translation will resume right now.
Okay, I'm hearing translation will resume right now. So, okay, so why don't we try that again? Mr. Labonte, try to start from the beginning.
Okay, thank you very much. So the department has not completed an assessment as outlined by the particular member, but I would indicate that for the nature of developing the battery components to EVs, there are multiple steps and multiple elements that are built in many parts of different countries. So if you can think about the components, they come from Canada, the United States, they come from Europe, they come from China, they come from many places. So I'm not quite sure that I can answer the question in the way that it's framed and posed, because it's not necessarily the way that we examine the particular issues, but I certainly understand the nature of where perhaps the interest is, and certainly looking at the process by which activities like batteries or other industrial activities are done. They are regulated from within the Canadian regulatory context. So any industrial activity or facility in the country is regulated for the emissions that it produces and what kinds of activities it does. So it depends on the nature of what it is and where it's located. So I'm not sure that it fully responds, but I'm trying my best to answer the question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think further to that, I mean, when we're looking at different countries that we're importing these materials from, does the government of Canada charge a carbon tax on products that are shipped in from those other countries, or are we only taxing companies in Canada that are extracting these minerals?
Well, I really appreciate that question, but the Department of Natural Resources is not responsible for taxation, and we're not responsible either for regulating greenhouse gas emissions for industrial activities. That would be the Department of Environment and Climate Change and the Department of Finance for taxation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Mr. Patzer, I'm going to have to stop you there. All right, Mr. Weiler, over to you for 6 minutes.
That was only 2.5 minutes, though, of my time. We had a lot of translation issues. That shouldn't be towards my time.
Don't think you were shortchanged there, Mr. Patzer, in the entirety of the scenario. So,
well, it definitely wasn't 6 minutes of question.
Okay, Mr. Weiler, over to you.
Thank you, and I also like to thank the witnesses for their patience today with the unfortunate vote we had in the House and our committee business. Deeply sorry for this. You know, and although it's been almost a year, it feels like it was decades ago since pretty much our whole committee was at PDAC in Toronto last year. So it's great to see some familiar faces. Really excited to get started with the study today, which comes at a really important time because the world economy is transforming in many ways, and there's going to be a huge need for critical minerals to support this transition. And also countries like China are using their dominance in the market of critical minerals to for instance, hobble the U.S. defense industry or threaten to do that. And as countries are seeking to diversify their sourcing of minerals, I think it does present a great opportunity for Canada. But it is going to be a very competitive environment to do that. And so my first question to the Mining Association of Canada, what do you see Canada's competitive advantage being in the critical mineral space?
Well, we have a few obvious ones. They were, I think, highlighted in my remarks, but also by NRCan. I think one of our advantages is as leaders in environmental, social, and governance issues. When I've been to Europe, back when I was able to go to Europe, and met with industries there, their preference is to source from Canada because they know they can rely on the quality and the rigor of our mining practices. They would rather not have to source from the Congo, for example, or from China if they can get it from Canada. So that is certainly one advantage. In many parts of the country, we have an abundance of hydropower. So and if you're grid connected, you're producing metals that have some of the lowest GHG intensity in the world. Nickel, for example, mined in Sudbury, is some of the lowest GHG intensity nickel in the world. We have obviously one of the safest mining industries on the planet. I participate in meetings of the International Council on Mining and Metals, and safety is very important to our industry's culture, and they regularly put up annual statistics on fatalities in the mining sector around the world, and Canada never appears on their chart. We just don't rank, which is a good thing. You don't want to be on that list. So, I mean, we have a highly skilled labor force. We're a very high-tech industry. We're advancing in areas like automation. We're advancing in areas like electrification. So there's many advantages that we have, but we also need to be conscious of our challenges. And I flagged one of the, I think one of the really important ones is currently some of our metals do come from off-grid mines, and carbon pricing is going to be a challenge for those operations unless we can support those facilities. Specifically, mines like Voisey's Bay in Labrador, or the Glencore mine in northern Quebec. They're off-grid, and yet they are two of the world's most important, high-grade nickel mines on the planet, and huge assets for Canada. They also have cobalt as byproducts. So we need to think about. We can't just sort of take it for granted. I guess the last point I'd make is we all know this is a vast country. And as Jeff mentioned in his remarks, we have everything the world needs. We're not necessarily exploiting it, but we certainly have it. If we can get to it and create the right conditions, we could be in a very, very strong place going forward. I don't know if my colleague Brendan Marshall might want to add to that, or if Mr. Chair, that's enough from me and from us.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Gratton. Maybe I'd just like to switch to a question with PDAC and Ms. McDonald. You mentioned as one of your suggestions for ways to advance this industry is investing in public geoscience. And I was hoping you could comment a little bit further on that and where you see opportunities for the best bang for the buck in terms of where this public geoscience studies should be done.
Thanks for that question. So, as I think was referenced in a couple of the presentations before mine, Canada is a vast country, and our resources are spread out across the country. So it would be, it's not possible to sort of sit here and cherry pick and indicate a particular area. And I think that in and of itself, speaks to some of the challenges and the opportunities that are in front of us. And it is absolutely critical for us to be successful with the critical mineral strategy to engage with the provinces and the territories and to provide the funding that is necessary for the provinces and territories to do those resource assessments themselves. No one knows better what the opportunities are within their various jurisdictions than the provinces and territories themselves.
Thanks, Mr. Weiler. I'm going to have to stop you there. Mr. Simard, over to you for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Gratton in London. I hope to hear the interpretation very well. We talk about the mining industry in Quebec. Well, historically, something comes back to mind automatically. The iron ore for 1 cent a ton, the Quebec mining ore was sent to the United States. So maybe there is some kind of memory trauma in Quebec in relation to the mining industry. We talk about value added, the second and third step of processing in critical metals. I feel that what's interesting is to develop those clusters in relation to new technologies like batteries. But do we do enough in this area? So this is the following question. Does the federal government has a strategy for the second or third processing steps with a value added? And if it's not the case, what can be done so that critical metals that are here are not simply exported in other countries to be transformed and processed in these other countries? Thank you.
I didn't get I don't get translation somehow.
Okay, I was going to suggest you go first because I went on for 5 minutes before or something. But ma première réponse, c'est de dire qu'on travaille actuellement avec.
Yeah, currently we are working with the federal government precisely to identify the required strategies to meet these goals you just outlined. We have to create a demand for products here in North America, not just in Canada. And it should be both Canada and the U.S. Create sufficient demand so people are interested in developing the mining sector. I can bring up a recent example from the Canadian government, Natural Resources Canada, that invested along with the Ontario government in redeveloping a cobalt refinery in northern Ontario. That's just one example. So it would be relaunching a cobalt mine that shut down several years ago. So that's a very positive development. So since you're from Quebec, I would like to point out that the Quebec government is probably currently the most focused on that issue. There is a very highly advanced strategy that has been put in place in the province of Quebec for strategic minerals to make sure that we do not only discover new mines, but that there is progress in developing materials along with mining products that are sold in the United States, in Europe, and around the world. So is it possible for my colleague to continue? Because he represents more the downstream.
Asking what you.
Je peux peut-être passer. Je vous remercie. Remercie.
No, thank you, Mr. Graton. Your French is excellent. Maybe a quick question to Mr. Labonte. In your presentation, Mr. Labonte, you said Canada was a choice supplier. So I just want some clarification on what you mean by supplier, because I have the impression that we are a place where we could export these critical minerals without necessarily processing them. So maybe just some clarification on that. And secondly, maybe some clarification on the federal government's strategy in developing the value chain for these critical metals. Thank you, Mr. Simard. Once again, Mr. Labonte's sound quality is not good enough, so we'll try to summarize what we can hear from the interpretation booth. We are working with our provincial and territorial partners on the chain. We need to do work in exploration and mining development, and also refining. And as Mr. Graton mentioned, we are working with our partners. And as usual, in Canada and in the North American context, there's cooperation between the provinces. There are some mines in Quebec that are processing and mining products from Ontario and vice versa. We create products that are exported to the United States. And in return, we have, for example, automobiles and other forms of transportation. So it's all integrated. We have to create demand for products and have strategic discussions between provinces and North American partners. So I don't know how exactly to put this. Maybe on stressing some of the significant change. With the U.S., we're working in the area of batteries for electric vehicles, for semiconductors, I forget the word in French, computers, all the cutting-edge technologies, and also health, advanced technologies in the health sector. So,
right, Mr. Labonte, Mr. Simard, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Cannings, over to you, sir, for 6 minutes.
Merci.
Well, thank you.
Thank the witnesses again for coming before us today and for your patience. I think I'll start with a question. I'm spoken broadly to NRCan, Mr. Labonte, and to PDAC, because these critical minerals and metals are often found in very small amounts, I imagine. For instance, in my writing, we have the Teck smelter in Trail, British Columbia, which mainly produces lead and zinc, but it produces germanium and indium in enough quantity. It might only be a matter of a few kilograms, maybe 10 or 20 kilograms, I forget the amount, but it's enough to be one of the major suppliers for the world. And I'm just wondering how the challenge of actually finding some of these critical minerals, perhaps like lithium or cobalt, and the role the federal government could play there. And I guess specifically my question would be what directions and funding the federal government is providing to the Geological Survey of Canada to provide better information for prospectors and other companies to actually find these materials across our big country.
Mr. Chair, if it pleases, I'll start the answer and perhaps allow my colleagues from PDAC as well to pick up following.
By all means, yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cannings, for the question, and Mr. Chair for the opportunity. So it's a very important part of the prospect of moving forward on critical minerals is to realize and discover what minerals we have, what their potential looks like, and as you point out, Member Cannings, sometimes the critical minerals that are produced are byproducts or smaller components of a bigger operation, and so you have a primary metal or mineral that's being produced, and almost as a sub item, you have the critical mineral that's produced as a byproduct as well, which is interesting because in some cases that it's expected that those byproducts will become the primary products over time, and their importance grows. So the government has recently actually included a renewal of the geoscience program on the Geological Survey, which falls under the responsibility of our department and my sector, of $130 million over the next 7 years. So it's called the Geoscience for Energy and Minerals program that predominantly works in the north. And then there's a secondary program called the Targeted Geoscience Initiative that actually doubles up with the provinces to work in specific areas where we have opportunities to grow. We also have research programs that are revisiting mining the value from waste, so taking waste or what might have been a previously discarded product and materials produced at mining sites and remining those materials and extracting more value from them and extracting, from example, from some of the tailings and and other elements, those finer materials that are actually quite valuable now in the critical mineral space. I'll leave it at that for now, Mr. Chair.
And I'm actually going to pass this question on to my colleague, Jeff Colleen, who is here with us today, our Director of Policy and Programs.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Cannings, for that question. I think it's a very valid one. And to put a point on it, you're right. Many of these types of deposits we're talking about when we get into critical minerals, they can be more challenging to discover. They can be of smaller scale. And I would also echo what Mr. Labonte just mentioned. The TGI and GEM programs that have been running for a number of years are instrumental in providing that knowledge base for industry to be able to step off of and conduct good work. But when we think about the challenge that's in front of us, when we think of the size of this country and the amount of deposits that may still rest in some of those remote and terrigenous regions, there is a real need for more support from the federal government. I think that's particularly why we've landed on thinking about the mineral exploration tax credit and thinking about expanding that incentive. It's something that currently exists. It's something that's been instrumental in making sure that there is real significant capital investment into exploration in Canada each and every year through the METC and the flow through share regime. Thinking about trying to spur more investment into these types of potentially smaller deposits, more challenging things to find, it makes sense to consider and expanding that incentive, particularly in light that it is a relatively low cost item for the government, and it's a way to direct retail investment in Canada towards new discoveries. So we think that that's a simple way to move forward. We also see where there is a real need beyond just the TGI and GEM programs for further geoscience work. And in particular, as we've talked about, working with the provinces to a greater degree to understand where there could be logical centroids or logical places for infrastructure to be developed that can maybe help bring some of these smaller deposits together and create that upstream production potential that is maybe lacking right now.
Thanks.
So thank you for that.
How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
Just under a minute.
Okay, I'll just ask a quick question perhaps to Mr. Gratton or anyone who wants to answer, and that's more about the international challenges of developing some of these deposits. I have a graphite mine in my riding. I think we're going to hear from them next week. They have graphite kind of on the surface. You can crush the ore with your hands. It's very easy to develop, and yet they can't compete with Mozambique, for instance, in getting that graphite into production in terms of finding big buyers. And, this is one of the ones that you mentioned, the demand will be going up 500%. So I'm just wondering if there's any comments on the help that producers have in getting international partners to move that material.
Okay, we have time for a very, very brief answer.
Who would like to?
See, in London, I don't mind jumping in on some of that. And some of it comes back to the discussion we had held before, and that's value adding. If some of those manufacturers who use the graphite located here or through Canadian content requirements in some of the end products, that would be incented. But on a raw commodity basis, Canada's going to have some challenges. We know that. On the value-added side, because of our metallurgical capabilities, it's not just about resources or new resources, but it's how do you add value to it. And on some of the other discussions, especially on the minor or the smaller volume critical materials, there are secondary sources. There are streams coming off of production facilities right now, which can be tapped into and made a value. That's how the Chinese got into the rare earth business. It actually came at their biggest, richest deposits. The rare earths are an off product from iron ore mining.
Thank you, Mr. London, and thank you, Mr. Cannings. Over to Mr. Lloyd for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions will be primarily pointed to Mr. Gratton. Thank you to all the witnesses for your presentations today. I'm just wondering, Mr. Gratton, I can assume, I don't know much about the mining industry, but I do have some friends who are very involved, is that, making a discovery is one thing, but it takes years to take something from discovery to production. Wouldn't you agree?
Got that right? Yes.
And thank you. And you know, I find it, you know, Canada has so many great champions in the mining sector, but it all seems like they're doing most of their work abroad. We're champions abroad, but in Canada we have, you know, we're not making any major new discoveries. Do you have any comment on that?
We have seen over the past decade a gradual decline in our percentage share of mineral exploration spending,
now,
which is, of course,
I mean, what do you contribute that to, that decline?
I think there's multiple factors. One is our competition is notably Australia now has a mineral, an METC of its own, which has boosted its attractiveness. I think the long time it takes to, you know, get a project through environmental assessment, impact assessment, the fact that we require 2 levels of impact assessment in Canada, which is unique in the world.
That was something I was sort of looking at. I'm sorry to interrupt. I've only got a limited amount of time. Appreciate the back and forth. You know, I have a geologist in my riding, and he does work around the world. A very interesting fellow. And he was telling me just the amount of time it takes to get a permit in Nevada. Like you're talking about, you know, a matter of a few months. But in Canada, how long would you say the average time to get a mining permit is in Canada?
Well, when you use the word permit, it depends. I mean, you have to go through environmental federal permit. So so the feds, it's an impact assessment or environmental assessment. I mean, it takes several years.
And across the world, I mean, electric vehicles, you know, the sales are booming. We're seeing with Tesla, you know, GM, Ford, even Land Rover, Jaguar's pledging to go electric. So we know that there is a need now and the need is going to explode. But would you say it's accurate to say that the need will explode and that it will be several years before Canada can even begin producing the raw materials needed to meet those needs?
The timelines that it takes to get mines through both federal and provincial processes is a real risk to our ability to take advantage of this opportunity. There's no question.
Now, I'm the critic for, you know, rural economic development. I know, you know, mines are predominantly located, if not completely located, in rural areas. I mean, what's going to be the impact on our rural regions if Canada doesn't have a seat at the table in prospecting and developing these great resources that we know are in Canada?
I think it will be very hard on rural Canada. I think that we're already seeing some of the impacts on parts of rural Canada where we've seen, you know, we're not building and developing mines at the pace that we used to. Part of it is we're not finding them. We've explored southern Canada a lot, and we found some great deposits, and we've mined them for decades. Our future is increasingly in the north. There, the bigger challenge is not timelines, it's infrastructure. We have some world-class deposits that we know of that we could mine tomorrow if it were economic to do so. And it's not because they have no access to power, roads, ports.
Now, one thing that you alluded to, you know, something that really concerns me is the issue of carbon leakage. You know, we increase carbon taxes, we put in clean fuel standards, but as we know, you know, most of mining done by Canadian companies is being done abroad. So, like when we're talking about the input costs increasing with carbon prices and without any sort of offsets that they can use, are we really just seeing, you know, mining being outsourced to other countries and Canada is not producing our world-class environmental deposits here?
We have, we're on the public record being in support of carbon pricing and have been for years, but we've also said that we have to be sensitive to Canada's north, which is off-grid, or large parts of it are off-grid. And
do you think that the prospect of these higher...
Mr. Lloyd, that's all your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grattan.
Am I done too then?
Well, until the next person asks you a question,
Okay.
which I expect will happen. Mr. Lefebvre, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello everyone. I know a lot of faces on the screen, so again, I apologize for the delays. This is a Class A panel that we have here, and I'm joining you from Sudbury, where I think we're up 8 operating mines right now, and I know Samantha is there is here as well in Sudbury. And actually, the irony is that this morning I was with a battery electric vehicle battery, obviously business or a person that was looking at certainly making very important investments in the sector, and certainly we're talking about reusing existing batteries that are used in mining vehicles that we know that a lot of them were actually manufactured right here in Sudbury. So there's a lot of amazing technology that is being produced, created here in Sudbury. Certainly, so 6 minutes will not give me any time to really dive into what I'd love to talk about hours about, because this is a very, very important file for my writing, and I would certainly believe for Canada. So maybe I'll start with Mrs. Epsley. Certainly with respect to your knowledge and your experience, and maybe on the processing and manufacturing side, certainly what opportunities do you see and what challenge do you see what we can do more here in Canada? Because I know that I know here in Sudbury, we're lucky. There's 2 huge smelters that we have, some of the largest in the world when it comes to nickel. But given your experience, and that, what do you see as certainly how can we increase the processing and manufacturing capacity of our minerals here in Canada?
It's a good question, Paul. I think that's a challenge for us. A lot of effort going in on the hydrometallurgy side to supplement the pyrometallurgy for the recovery of the metals. I think that we're seeing a lot of agreements being made between mining companies and those processors. So whether you have a smelter or not, we're doing custom smelting for a multitude of mining companies, and allowing us to make better use or better utilization of those facilities. I think it's an opportunity that we can explore as a mining industry as best we can. I think the opportunity really is looking for new technologies and support from the government in finding new innovative ways of treating and doing, if you like, modular or different types of technologies. I know, we're always pushing the envelope from CIM and working with industry and folks, right, academics and the government and the like, in order to try and come up with new solutions.
And that's critical, because I know the world is looking at and I know we're going to have PDAC next month or in a few weeks, and we'll be doing so virtually. And I know Ms. McDonald is here, and certainly every time that I go to PDAC, people from the world show up to Canada and really look at Canada to see what we're doing here and to import our best practices of what's going on here. And we certainly talked about, as we're looking at the critical minerals and the importance of exploration and investing in exploration and the challenges we have there. I know maybe very briefly, Ms. McDonald, we talked about the geosciences and the importance of those investments to the exploration sector in Canada. And I know we just renewed it, and certainly maybe from PDAC's perspective, give me just tell us why it's so important to make those investments.
Thank you for the question. So, I think as been evidenced in most of the conversation today, it's clear that Canada has the minerals. We know that they're here. We've found the easy stuff. And now what's left are the more challenging things to find. They're at depth. They're more remote. And of course, with the critical minerals, we're talking about, a suite of minerals and metals that have their challenges with how they are found. It's not necessarily using the same traditional methods that we've used and become so good at and become those world leaders for. And so those kinds of investments in geoscience are going to help ensure that we remain a world leader in terms of expertise.
I agree. And so, and maybe Pierre or Mr. London, with respect to just going back to George, going to the battery supply chain, and how can we secure more of that supply chain in Canada? I think that's what we're talking about here, as we're looking at the electrification of our world and how that is so important. So, and I know you've addressed it in some of your comments, but I really want to touch back on that, is saying, what are the gaps that exist right now in Canada in the battery supply chain, and what certainly as a government we can do to really further support that research and certainly support that development?
Mr. Lefebvre, I hate to do this. You started by saying 6 minutes wasn't enough, but I have bad news because you only had 5. So I'm going to have to stop you there. So I'm sure that issue will get addressed.
I'm sure. And I'm hoping, Mr. Chair, that we are able to actually send letters and ask our witnesses to answer our questions by writing.
Yeah, of course, always.
You.
Okay, Mr. Simard, over to you for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From Mr. Lalonde and Mr. Gratton's answers, I understand that we need to create demand in critical minerals. From what I understand, demand for these minerals is going to come from the electrification of vehicles. So if we want to support demand and if we want to support transport electrification, a carbon tax would be a good thing because it means that we would have means of transportation that emit very low greenhouse gas emissions. So, Mr. Gratton and Mr. Labonte, do you think that these strategies are interesting? Do you think that carbon pricing would help? And how could the government go about it to accelerate the electrification of transportation and create an ecosystem that is more interesting for critical metals? Thank you.
I'm not quite sure who the question was.
I was going to say, anyone want to take that on?
Je m'adresse à M. Gratton,
from the Mining
peut-être M.
Association.
Labonte.
I can speak to that very briefly.
My question was for Mr. Labonte.
Support carbon pricing. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is affect behavioral change and incentivizing the appropriate behaviors on the basis of a carbon price. But at the end of the day, we also need to be sensitive that a one-size-fits-all solution isn't apportioned equally in all shapes and sizes. We are carbon vulnerable in remote and northern regions in this country. And as we approach a higher threshold of carbon costs, we're going to need a managed transition to a lower carbon reality for some of these off-grid sites. And if we want to grow the critical mineral supply chain, there are many things that we can do. I'll speak to that in one moment, but we cannot lose sight or take for granted the pre-existing world-class critical mineral supply chain that already exists in Canada, in Quebec, in Ontario, in other provinces in the north as well. This next part to your question also speaks to a question that Ms. Lefebvre had, and that is what gaps need to be filled here. I think it would be a false impression for this committee to take away that a critical mineral supply chain and a battery electric vehicle supply chain are one and the same thing. They overlap, but the reality is they are also very different. Some critical minerals don't go into batteries, but they do go into electric vehicles, okay? Some critical minerals go into computer chips that electric vehicles can't work without drive, but they're not in the battery themselves.
I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to interrupt you and stop you because Mr. Simard we're beyond his time actually. So I'll move on to Mr. Cannings for 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I think what I'd like to talk about as briefly as I can is recycling. The recycling of these new batteries is often brought up as a challenge. I just wondered if, perhaps Mr. Labonte or someone can comment on the opportunities that's there for recycling. I, again, have a recycling company in Trail, one of the companies kind of surrounding the smelter, that I think is the only company in the world that will recycle basically any battery in the world, including pure lithium batteries. And I'm just wondering what opportunities Canadian companies have in that sphere.
Yeah, it's a terrific question. So the issue here is about creating a circular economy. So many of the minerals and critical minerals and metals that we have and need will come in a circular economy, and a metal can almost be used endlessly as it begins and ends its life in different products and in different forms. So there are a number of instruments we're looking at, and certainly a number of places. We are doing research on extracting from existing streams and looking at some of those streams as being recycling. There's the regulatory context of what are the recycling regulations that exist across the country, and they are different in different places for different materials. And in some instances, the drive behind those regimes has often been waste reduction, or to reduce the amount and volume of waste rather than extracting a value from the waste. So some of this is about turning around the purpose for the recycling and of course having a dual interest. Less metal requirement from a demand point of view will also lessen the amount of waste that's produced if it's drawn from recycling sources and purposes. So there is a manner in which we can work together and think that through a little bit more closely. It's one of the topics that we're working on with our provincial and territorial colleagues about exploring and understanding where that value can be extracted from recycling activities.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Cannings. Okay, we're going to go to Mr. Zimmer, and then we are going to finish up with Mr. Sidhu. Mr. Zimmer, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for all for your testimonies today. I have a question, just a little bit of a different take on it, I suppose. I think Mr. Lloyd alluded to this too, about how governments can kneecap industry and make it so difficult to operate with timelines of approvals, etc. It becomes very vulnerable to takeovers. And many of you have seen the recent attempt of a takeover, but blocked by this government, which I give them kudos for doing. And I'll just talk about, everybody knows the TMAC Resources Hope Bay situation. What would you do, and I guess I would start with Mr. Grattan, to best ensure that our resources really aren't put at risk by some of these situations? I see some of the way that government's this government's kneecapped the resource sector. It makes it.
Sorry, Mr. Zimmer, I apologize for interrupting, but apparently your mic needs to be moved a little closer to your mouth.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, I think that's better. Thanks.
Okay,
Sorry
thanks.
about that. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just get to the question, Mr. Grattan. You've heard the principle of what I was saying. There's especially with the concern, everybody understands the need for capital in mining, especially. We get that. I'm in northern BC, I understand that. But when we see especially a Chinese takeover where the Chinese, there's some concerns around its actions of late that it puts our resources at risk. Anyway, go ahead, answer, please.
Our sector has a complicated relationship with China. They're the largest consumer of minerals and metals, and our industry right now is enjoying buoyant commodity prices more or less across the board, and it's largely because China's economy has rebounded. But it's also true that they don't play by our rules when it comes to investing in the mining business. They're not a market-based economy. They're state-run enterprises. They invest for strategic reasons, and we have members that compete with them around the world, and it's hard to compete with them. And I've heard many stories from many of our members of just how tricky that is. And so because it's a government relationship that they engage in other parts of the world, and whereas we're the private sector trying to compete on private sector rules, so it's difficult.
Maybe, and sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Grattan. It's good to have you here, especially with your expertise. But how do we look at the positive side out of this? How do we strengthen, I guess, our mining sector so that, without saying we're protecting the industry as we want to compete with nations around the globe, but how do we positively, strengthen our industry without subsidizing it? But how do we strengthen it so, again, our industry isn't vulnerable to these kind of actions?
Mm-hmm. Well, and this goes, I guess, to one of the core questions that the study is about, is how do we create the North American demand for these products? What is the downstream pull that we can create so that it is more viable than going to China for these products? The automotive sector and the battery strategy is part of it, but as we've also heard, that's not the only part. What are the different things we can do? There's offtake agreements that can be negotiated between mines and downstream users of those products. There's the support that we've seen that's starting to flow by governments to help a cobalt refinery relaunch, and once it's up and running, the market conditions can then take over. So we may need some seed funding. We talked in our presentation about the importance of pilot projects, and then helping them to commercialize. And then once they're up and running, the market forces will take over. But we need to create that internal North American demand, supported as well by European demand. This is a geopolitical issue that is taking shape faster than I think many of us realize, and we need to be really laser focused on it.
Thanks, Mr. You've got about 10 seconds left, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, just concerns how you see them as well, Mr. Grattan, from my side of the fence. But hopefully we can do some things to make us players in the game again, where we don't need to worry about these takeovers. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Zimmer. Okay, Mr. Sidhu, you are last but not least today, so you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for hanging here with us today on this beautiful Friday afternoon. My first question is, how can we ensure critical mineral processing and manufacturing capacity is increased within Canada? And I'd like to hear from PDAC first.
That's not actually the processing and manufacturing. Really, I don't think it's a good use of our limited time here for me to do that. I think I'm going to pass it over to Mr. London, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Two things have happened recently in the U.S., and I'm sure you've been appropriately briefed, or you will be. One is the contemplation of the Green Act, where there was caps put on by the Trump administration on the number of electric vehicles could be produced in the U.S. by each manufacturer. That's been tripled the last little while. How do you encourage more electric vehicles? How do we put requirements by the manufacturers of the vehicles? We put a lot of money into General Motors, the Oakville plants, and all of this. Canadian content rules. There's ways of doing it. The Europeans are very interested in Canadian minerals. They're just as interested as processing them. I suggest we don't get too engaged in selling them or providing them with just pure raw materials. How do we value add to it? We can do that through these trade agreements and branding Canada's product of cleaner, more transparent in terms of traceability and provenance, et cetera. So there's a number of ways of Canada being at the table on the standards, on metallurgy. I just want to compliment the folks around the table. It's not just batteries. Lightweighting materials. If we can take 500 pounds off the weight of that car, we can carry that battery. Other thing, so there's a number of these things. We get different kind of wiring in vehicles, and we have the manufacturing base. Jaguar already makes an all-electric vehicle. It's actually built by Magna in Austria. We shouldn't kid ourselves that the advancing of the technologies, how do we engage those end users? They will create demand. They have the pull on their supply chain. It'll make it easier to finance some of the mining projects. One last comment, and short, but appreciate the time. Demand pull versus supply push. We got to create that. And as such, if you look at demand pull, this is not necessarily, and no disrespect of all my colleagues, they come out of that world. This is not a mining initiative. It's not just mining. It's that whole industrialization that we're talking about. And we should not lose sight of that fact.
Thank you, Mr. London, for that. And definitely, I know there's much more to mining than just electric vehicle batteries. But I'm getting a lot of calls into my constituency office, especially after the Ford announcement and the GM announcement and Canada's investments into that sector. So that's something that kind of relates a lot to the bedroom community here in Brampton. Can you also elaborate more on the risk associated with not securing our supply chains for these commodities? I know you spoke about many of the benefits, but Mr. London, if you can elaborate more on the risks associated with not securing supply chains.
I won't talk about vaccines, so I'm not even going to go there. But associated with all these minerals and capabilities we have, so goes the technology. So if we're not producing the product, we don't have control of it. How did the Chinese build an entire infrastructure? They created 100 million jobs just around rare earth. Started with their rare earth supplies, commodities, powders, etc. They eventually took the magnet business. We now buy their refrigerators, motors, and washing machines. If we look at it that way from a demand pull, that's the kind of strategies this country can implement. We have access to European markets, the American markets, and our own. That's what we have to take advantage of. So the risk of not doing that is also goes at technology, the high-tech jobs, the high-tech schools, the programs, and the environment. They're trucking all this stuff. We're trucking the heavy stuff and bringing back the light stuff. I prefer not to truck the heavy stuff. Sorry.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, I've got a few seconds left, so I'll just take this time to just thank everyone for being here and sharing your insights with us. Definitely learned a lot today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sidhu. I appreciate you sticking to the time. Listen, to all of our witnesses, thank you for your input. This is the first day of this study, and you got us off to a great start. But thank you again for your patience and indulging us. It's been for some more than others, it's been a very strange day in our business, and sometimes things get in the way. So you guys were great, and I want to thank all of the staff and people who hung around and helped us get this meeting concluded too. It's been a long day and a long week, but on that note, our meeting is adjourned. That's my alarm going off. That means the week's over. So all the best, and thanks very much. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.